Welcome and thank you for standing by. Your lines have been placed on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session. At that time, if you would like to ask a question, you may press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I will turn the call over to Terry Carney Brown. You may begin.
Thank you, and welcome to the Child Welfare Information Technology Systems Managers and Staff webinar series brought to you on behalf of the Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, Children's Bureau. Today's roundtable features a distinguished panel from 2 states, Ohio and New York, who will discuss their experiences and challenges relating to the National Electronic Interstate Compact enterprise known as NEICE. I am Terry Carney Brown, your host and facilitator for today's discussion. I want to thank our panelists for their time and effort in preparing for this roundtable. So let's meet today's panelists, starting with Ohio.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Bullock. I'm the Business Program Manager for Ohio SACWIS, the name of our CWIS system. With me, I have 2 of our lead business analysts, our subject matter experts on our NEICE functionality. I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Michelle Lytle.
And this is Michael Stouffer.
Thank you. And next we have New York.
Hi, and good afternoon. This is Carol McCarthy. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Permanency Services here at the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. Additionally, I have the distinct honor of also the title of ICPC Compact Administrator. With me today is...
Hi, everybody. Sharon Jocelyn. I'm an ICPC Supervisor for New York State ICPC, as well as the Deputy Compact Administrator. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, very distinguished panelists. So our next slide, please. Thank you. Attendees are encouraged to participate in the roundtable with discussion, questions, or comments. All of the participant lines are muted now, but we will open them for Q&A session at the end of the panel discussion. Please be aware that you can submit questions at any time using the GoToWebinar chat feature, and those will be queued up and addressed during the Q&A session. Once today's roundtable has ended, you may submit additional questions to the email address listed or to your federal analyst. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now to get us started, Marcie Roth will share a map of the NEICE states and describe the current state of affairs. Marcie?
Great. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. This is Marcie, and I'm the Project Director for the NEICE project, and I work with APHSA and the ICPC, and I'm very pleased to be with you all today to talk about the NEICE grant and the project that's been going on since 2013. So NEICE began as a pilot between 2013 and 2015. We had about 20 months to build, develop, and test the NEICE project. There were 6 pilot states that did an outstanding job getting NEICE off and running, and early results were so promising that the Children's Bureau decided to invest in NEICE and taking it nationwide. And we've been very fortunate to partner with them and are grateful for all the support, technical and otherwise, that they've given us along the way. So at this point, we have 30 states, again, who are using the NEICE project and who are live in the NEICE system today. We have another 7 states who have signed the MOU, the Memorandum of Agreement, which governs the data sharing between the states and through the NEICE system. And those 7 states are working to come on board by the end of 2019. So we're very pleased with the progress and excited that for your interest and happy to help answer questions that you might have as you're considering going on to the NEICE system. I did want to just mention there are 2 ways that states can join NEICE, 2 technical ways. One is through the Modular Case Management System, and the second one is through what we call the NEICE Clearinghouse Direct option. And I wanted to just give you a 1 or 2 line overview, and I know our states that are on the line will talk more about those 2 options. So the Modular Case Management System option is where we actually give the application for creating and sending cases for the ICPC cases to you as a state. So we would give you the application, and the state, you could then install that application on your server or cloud, if you have a cloud that you use in your state. and it comes with a connection that's already working to this data exchange highway that connects all the states, which we call the clearinghouse. So that's one option. And the second option is for you to include the functionality for processing ICPC cases in your CWIS or SACWIS systems, and then you would build an interface between your CWIS system to the NEICE clearinghouse. So your workers would never have to leave your home system in order to create and send cases. They could process everything right from your home system and be able to connect through NEICE to all the other states. So those are the options that are available, and happy to answer any questions you have at any point on those options or otherwise related to NEICE. And really grateful to the states that have joined today and for all the hard work that they have done to help join the NEICE project and help us make it as strong as it is. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Marcie. Next slide, please. And now we will start our discussion. So what is our format for today's roundtable? I will pose a series of questions to prompt our state panelists in a discussion focusing on these topics, which I hope will give rise to an informational as well as a lively discussion. We're going to set a little context here. So in other words, we're going to take a look at each state's NEICE approach. We're going to look at their pros and cons of NEICE, the quality of service, the delivery outcomes, the implementation time, did they use staff or a vendor, the level of effort it took, the resources it took, the cost, the scheduling. We're also going to touch on the onboarding experience, introducing new users and the training, and also the exchange approach. Were there issues, were there roadblocks for the states to consider that are thinking about this for the future? And lastly, we will have each state share valuable lessons learned.
Hi there, this is Michael Stouffer calling in from Ohio. I just wanted to go over our approach. Ohio is decentralized and county administered. All of our 88 counties are currently utilizing the NEICE system, and since going live, we have had a total of 865 cases. Our system consists of a direct interface between Ohio SACWIS and the NEICE clearinghouse. The clearinghouse acts as a secure pass-through once the county staff record all the data and upload all the required documents. This process helps eliminate dual entry and helps eliminate the process of logging into separate systems. So once that happens, then there's every 30 minutes the alerts will notify the worker if a transmittal is received.
Hi, everybody. New York went live in NEICE on August 6, 2018. And from that date through May 31st, 2019, I apologize for the typo on the slide. That was actually 2019. Our stats are that we have had 1,097 incoming cases into New York and 1,389 requests going out of New York.
Hi, and this is Carol speaking. So our approach here in New York was we started, of course, with the MOU process, which we signed back in September of 2017. And that was at a time when we could accept NEICE as just the case management system. As Marcie explained now, states are moving into the MCMS system, not CMS directly. So that was all well and good. We were very excited about that because we were coming from an internal database that was a little bit difficult to use. And as we started to conduct our testing, we identified what for New York State is a major security and confidentiality issue, and that was the fact that users who came into NEICE could see the Social Security numbers, all Social Security numbers, all 10 digits of the Social Security number that were available in NEICE. That's a problem for us. So we worked with Tetris and APHSA, and they came up with a solution whereby Social Security numbers are hidden, and the only thing you can see is the last 4 digits unless you have access to that case. So we were able, once that resolution was in place, to go forward. And again, we started up again with our internal ICPC staff training. At the same time, we worked on drafting a policy. We were able to release that policy in August of 2018, and that policy is called Requirements for Use of NEICE, and if any of you are interested in reviewing it, we've provided the link to that policy here on the slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about that policy. It includes some requirements for any user in the state of New York, any user to NEICE. Before they can get into NEICE, they must complete the self-guided NEICE e-learning training. They must complete one webinar, which is our live or recorded training that we conducted in collaboration with Tetris. And the user must also complete our non-disclosure form. This is, again, we're very confidentiality and security conscious here in the state of New York, and the non-disclosure form speaks to that, and that users will, in fact, abide by all of the New York State requirements regarding Social Security and any other information that they might be observing within the NEICE system. So once we issued that policy, we were able to move forward and invite our counties to join us. And what we did was, it was a process of having our staff contact work in regions and contact the counties, asking them to identify ICPC liaisons. Once they did that, we were able to get them, through the policy, have them follow the process. Like I say, we did our training webinar and we recorded it. We then had it printed out on CDs so we could supply that to our local departments of social services. The other way the webinar was available was on YouTube. Not all of our local departments of social services or voluntary agencies have access to YouTube, which is why we did the CD approach as well. We then rolled out the system regionally through the identification of the liaisons who then conducted their training, reviewed their webinar, and provided us with their non-disclosure form. By December of 2018, we had users within all 62 of our counties. Our St. Regis Mohawk tribe is also now in NEICE, and 25 of our voluntary agencies also have access. Currently, we're at 345 active users in our system.
Yep, so this is Michael from Ohio again. So basically, some of the pros and cons, just improved efficiency of the overall process due to these documents being made in near real time. The ICPC documents that are contained within our SACWIS system are readily accessible to the caseworkers. This saves on paper, shipping, money, and time. Some of the challenges were the communication between the states and understanding when technical issues do arise, because sometimes we wouldn't recognize those until after the sending state would contact us to ask us for an update. And then as more states come on board, we believe that it's important to focus on the consistency and coordination to ensure the overall success of the program.
So in New York, the service delivery and outcomes of NEICE, we are very pleased with the fact that it provides enhanced security and confidentiality. We feel like that's our major goal, to protect the confidentiality of our children and our families. It's decreased lag time in our office tremendously. We relied heavily on U.S. mail for a very long time to share documents and information with other states and with our locals, and NEICE allows this sharing of documents and information to be instantaneous almost. The real-time document sharing is very valuable, and the ability to message our locals and technically email our locals within the system, also very useful. It provided a heightened responsiveness. We find our locals respond much more quickly. It's facilitating us getting these requests out the door much quicker. And I'd like to just take this moment to share an example with you all that I'm very happy with and very proud of. We had a New York local call frantic shortly after we went live in NEICE that one of the children's placements, current placements in New York, was disrupting. And they had asked for a home study of a relative in Florida. So she was calling frantically trying to get a status on that home study because they really didn't want to move this little guy into another stranger's home. So as soon as I got off the phone with her, I sent a request in NEICE to Florida for a status on that home study. That was approximately 9:30 in the morning. By 2 o'clock that same day in the afternoon, New York ICPC had the home study from Florida. We had transferred the documents and the placement decision to our local, and our local by that afternoon, that same day, that same afternoon, they were securing plane ticket for that little guy to get to Florida to his grandmother's house. This never would have been possible prior to NEICE. It would have been at least a couple days delay in exchanging information and getting statuses, and this example is a real example, and it's a prime example of how NEICE really facilitates communication and speeds up permanency for children. Some pros that we of NEICE that we just talk about all the time here. Allows us to place children with families much faster. It almost eradicated the backlog in New York ICPC. We had cases pending awaiting review. We had approvals and denials waiting review. We would have piles of cases on our desks at times when we were getting a lot of mail and a lot of requests. And once NEICE was operational and statewide, the backlog disappeared. It really allows for a team approach. You can go in, you can help your teammates or your fellow team with notifications. You can process their cases if they're absent from work that day. It increases staff efficiency. There's no lost cases. There's no lost papers anymore. It's increased our morale on our ICPC unit. The help and the support provided by Tetris is amazing. The responsiveness is immediate, it feels like. They resolve issues for us within one working day most times. And the e-learning component of the training was absolutely invaluable. It was very self-guided, it was informational, and it was very helpful.
Hi, this is Carol again. So some of the cons, you can see the cons the pros far outweigh any of the negatives that we experienced with NEICE. We found that it was a little difficult for some of our users across the state to navigate, which surprised us because I think maybe we were here at the state office, we just were a little bit more comfortable working within databases related to ICPC cases. So some of our liaisons in the counties found it a little bit difficult to navigate at first. So just, a heads up, it might require a little bit of patience, a little bit of hand-holding with your state office and your locals on that part. Report functionality, now that we have NEICE, boy, we love reports. So I know that we're working together with APHSA now on some additional report functionality. We like that. I think all states, you'll find that it's just so helpful to have access to these reports indicating what's late, what's due, how much work has been conducted, completed, placements made. The reports that exist are wonderful, but we certainly, are never satisfied with what we have. We're looking for more. And then the other thing that is always a little bit of a challenge and really has nothing to do with NEICE itself, but just something to be heads up about, scanning documents. This one's, kind of interesting for us. It's not always easy for folks to understand how to scan. Some of our local departments of social service workers were even confused as to how to use a printer, their scanners to print and scan and the vice versa. So again, some hand-holding was needed on that. And also the fact that we like here the scanned documents scanned as one request, and that might result in very large files. And we found if they were more than 10 megabytes, the county would have to break it down into smaller groups of files in order to get all the documents in there. But those are just some of the pieces that work better for us, and these are just little sort of heads-up items if you're deciding to move forward, just to give a little bit of patience and a little bit of understanding that these are that might be some bumps in the road for your counties or your agencies.
This is Kevin in Ohio. Ohio did invest considerable resources in creating the NEICE interface. As you can see from the bullets, the project began in August 2017 and lasted a little over a year for both design and development, and implementation went live in September of 2018. I went back and looked, and the investment in the actual cost is somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 based on our reported costs. I would also point out that we did take some additional time to redesign the ICPC and ICMA functionality that we had in SACWIS, since we are already working in those areas, things that weren't necessary for the NEICE interface but were needed while we are working in that area of functionality. We also needed to create new screens to account for the interface to allow the user to invoke the submission of documents and, et cetera, to use the NEICE clearinghouse. We did use vendor staff predominantly to create the functionality, but we have transitioned to our state development team for ongoing maintenance and operations. As part of the implementation in Ohio, we realized that ample testing time and resources were needed for the implementation, as well as an ongoing troubleshooting kind of maintenance effort that we continue today to maintain this functionality.
Yes, this is Michelle. When we started the project design, at that time, we did not have any ability to upload documents into our SACWIS system, so we also had to account for, functionality to allow users to upload their files. And as Kevin said, we also took the opportunity to really clean up and enhance the functionality that we already had. It was outdated and just in need of updating and making it more streamlined and user-friendly, while at the same time incorporating the new NEICE functionality. So we were able to accomplish a lot within the project. And so about halfway through the design phase, we did bring in a group of ADCAs for ICPC, the compact administrators of our counties, to kind of let them know what NEICE was about and what our plans were, and show them some early designs and get some feedback. And we knew at that point even that just as New York experienced, some of our counties are smaller and they didn't have as many resources. Some weren't aware of what their agency had available as far as scanning or how to use that equipment. And so there were some additional training needs in some of the agencies to get them on board. We also, at the point that we were introducing the new functionality, we brought people from as many agencies as possible. We asked everybody to send a person, and we held a walk-through training session and gave counties the opportunity to log into our training environment and actually practice interacting with the NEICE test environment. So our Ohio SACWIS staff actually went into the NEICE test environment and set up a bunch of cases and sent them to our Ohio counties so that they would have a placement request waiting for them at training to actually experience that process and learn how to do it. So on one hand, our implementation was easy in the sense that this was the system that they're already used to working in. We also were able to leverage the functionality to automate pieces of information. So basically when requests come in from another state through NEICE, our worker does a process to accept that request and initiate the case, and then all of that data from the sending state is automatically populated into our new and improved ICPC record. So the caseworker only has a few steps to get that record into an active status and actually go and begin working on it and get it assigned to someone to go do the home study. So we tried to incorporate as many efficiencies as possible, and the functionality in general is what our users are used to. So it was just acclimating them to the new procedures that took some time and continues as with any new functionality, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but everything's not going to go perfectly, and so we've kind of had to be flexible and, you know, patient as issues arise, and we just kind of address those and provide the ongoing technical assistance to our users as they go. Next slide.
Thank you. This is Terry. I have a quick question for you. We have a quick question. Someone wanted to know what strategies did Ohio use to involve counties and the business staff?
That's a great question. When we first began design sessions, we actually had our state ICPC compact administrator present for all of the design sessions. And then, as I said, about halfway through, once we had kind of ironed out the big picture things, we did extend an invitation to the counties to come in and see a demonstration and learn more about NEICE. And then we talked to them about what our plan was for how we were going to implement it. We were able to actually show them, you know, like early designs of the screens and so forth to gather some feedback.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Okay, New York, you can proceed.
Hi, so this is Carol again, and our implementation was, of course, quite different, again, because we implemented the CMS system. And as I mentioned before, you know, a lot of it was really, there was time and effort spent on drafting a good policy that would inform our counties and users on what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. So once that policy was issued, which was early August of 2018, we had the mechanism to provide to them the very easy step-by-step about what they needed to do, and provided them with the tools with how they were going to learn how to use NEICE. The other advantage we had is we already were working with our New York City Administration for Children's Services, who of course is our largest county, so all of New York City, and Suffolk County. They were involved with us in a pilot with our prior database. So they had been working with us all along, and we had brought them in for a couple of training sessions on the webinar and all of that early on, and we knew that we were going to bring them in within days of our staff going live, and they were well prepared and eager to join us in NEICE as well. Once they were in and things were running smoothly, you know, we began the training of the other statewide users. All of this work, and I can't say it enough, was the work of the ICPC staff here at OCFS. We did not have a vendor. We did not have a contractor. We did not bring in additional staff. We did not have overtime. It was time spent during their regular work day to bring on all of the users across the state. We are very, very fortunate in the committed teamwork of the group here at New York State ICPC. Many of you who are hopefully on this call know them and how helpful they are, and just how very receptive they are to your concerns and working and making sure that the cases move quickly. So in addition to their day-to-day work of moving all the paperwork that was, you know, we were still trying to get rid of some paperwork at that time, this group of very committed individuals did everything and organized this process of bringing on all of the users. So from the day that the New York State ICPC office went live, which was August 6th, until the day that we can say we had statewide access was only 4 months. So we're pretty proud of that. And thank you, New York State ICPC team. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Michelle. Some of the challenges that we had were mainly being the pioneers for the NEICE clearinghouse. So there wasn't really a roadmap per se. We did have, documentation that Tetris provided to us, and we had access to their test environment as well. But certainly there were some things that we didn't really understand until we were doing it, and then we realized that we needed to kind of go back and tweak a few things, which continues. We continue to make improvements over time and enhancements to the functionality to try to make the process a little smoother for users on our end. But we just didn't have any prior experience. I know some states had been using the CMS and then since then have worked toward moving over into the clearinghouse, but we were coming in fresh. So our initial testing was done against the NEICE Case Management System. So, we would kind of work both sides. So we got to learn how to use that as well, so we could send cases back and forth to ourselves in a test environment and try to work out, the bugs ahead of time. So once, we had that pretty well down, and then other states came on to the clearinghouse, and it's very important that everybody is kind of doing things consistently and coordinating, and so we tried to coordinate testing efforts and so on. But there have been a few things that popped up that just came across differently from those other clearinghouse states than what we had been getting from the CMS. So we kind of had to adjust and, make some code adjustments to account for those differences and those variables. So it's just like with any new technology, just figuring it out and being prepared to have a backup plan and being prepared to be flexible and address those changes as they come. Other than that, I would just recommend to allow plenty of time and resources for testing. There's a lot of details that come across over the clearinghouse, and so you really are getting all of the information that you would normally see on your ICPC 100A form, plus the documents that are scanned. And so we just had to take a lot of time to make sure that, each piece of data was coming across correctly and that we were mapping things right and putting things where they belong. So that was really important. And then, again, the training and the time that we spent with users to get them prepared ahead of time was very valuable. And then, finally, just the ongoing communication between states has been really important. And so as new states are preparing to come on the clearinghouse, we've tried to coordinate the testing with them so we can exchange some cases in a test environment and make sure that things are going to work and, that we're prepared for them to come on, and just sharing some of those lessons learned as well so that it gets a little bit easier each time a new state comes on board.
Hi, this is Sharon in New York. So our onboarding experience went relatively painlessly. It was a group effort. We divided the state into regions. We had 3 ICPC staff members in the office. Each had 2 regions. They were in charge of identifying an ICPC liaison, backup users at each office, each district, each voluntary agency. We provided them the link to the e-learning. That was a mandatory requirement prior to gaining access to the live NEICE environment. We signed them all up for the UAT, the practice environment. We didn't require that they practice in that environment, but we strongly suggested that they practice. And all of them that did really found it very useful, and they enjoyed the experience, and it made their entrance into NEICE a little easier, and they were able to navigate a little bit better once they got into the live environment having practiced. The training webinar, as we stated earlier, was available to them on a CD or a YouTube video. We also required every single user that was going to be granted access into the live NEICE environment to sign a non-disclosure agreement. We required them to sign that non-disclosure agreement, put the date that they viewed the webinar on that agreement, and get that agreement back to us at central office. Once all of those requirements were completed, we onboarded the user. We gave the user rights to the NEICE Live environment. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, the scanning was a bit of a challenge at first. Some people didn't know how to do it. Some people would scan each document individually up into NEICE and not scan it as a packet. But these are very, very small hurdles to get over, and with the ICPC team's expertise in NEICE and the availability of Adobe Pro, we can fix anything. We also wanted to mention that using NEICE in the office has really freed up a lot of our time that we were really bogged down with paper and chasing mail prior to going into NEICE. The workload remained the same, but the time that it took us to complete our workload changed dramatically, and that allowed our ICPC team to become generalists, to be trained in all of the parent, relative, foster care, adoption, private adoption, residential, all of the ICPCs. And it really opened the door to everyone being available to help anyone with anything at any time, ICPC related, which was a wonderful experience for us. Next slide.
Thank you, New York. Before we move on to lessons learned, I have one additional question. Now that we know how you chose your approaches, we wanted to understand why you chose the respective approach for your state, New York and Ohio, starting with you, New York.
Hi, this is Carol. So as I mentioned earlier, we were in a database, it was called ICPC2, and it was very difficult to navigate. We knew we had to move as quickly as possible out of it. We also recognized after working with our IT folks that the data exchange between the two systems would not work or would be so extensive that it would not work. So we were very, very fortunate that CMS was available to us basically as a package that we could just take it, and with some e-learning and some practice, we could become efficient users of NEICE. So that is why we went with CMS. We recognize that we have work ahead of us. We recognize that we will soon be planning to move to MCMS, and that too will take some doing, but we're fully prepared now for that, and I think that will go reasonably smoothly as well. Thank you.
Thank you, New York. Ohio?
Yes, we considered our options when we knew moving to NEICE was important to us for our ICPC records. We decided, based on our business users, our county partners that are actually working to complete the case management, working on these ICPC cases, to go ahead and build the interface directly with the clearinghouse to make sure we don't increase the burden on our caseworkers. They're already recording ICPC information in SACWIS. We felt it best to build that interface to move the information directly through rather than have it be entered in a separate system in Ohio. Again, they're already recording a majority of this ICPC information, or they were already recording that in Ohio SACWIS. So we wanted to go ahead and leverage that functionality, and that was in response to the desires of our business partners, as I mentioned. And also, as Michelle mentioned earlier in the slides, that did ease our training and our implementation. We were able to modify our existing system, provide new self-guidance. Michelle, a webinar was also created, and that's actually available online if anyone's interested in going to the Ohio SACWIS knowledge base. You can just search for that in Google, look for the NEICE webinar on that site, and you'll be able to see the functionality that we've implemented.
Thank you. And now we can move on to the lessons learned. New York?
Lessons learned. Well, as I said earlier, practicing in UAT was very, very helpful. It was helpful to us as a team here at Central Office, as well as it was very helpful to our partners out in our community, our local districts. It really lets you get your feet wet, if you will, and to play around and learn the system before you're working with real data, and you don't have to worry about making mistakes, and you can ask questions along the way, and it was I can't stress enough how helpful that was to us. Scanning, just a one suggestion, scanning the request packet as a one packet is very helpful, as opposed to scanning individual documents. New York State would just really encourage any state that's thinking about coming on board to join NEICE. It really has an opportunity to make a significant change. It really has a direct impact on the permanency for children, and it can make a real change in improving the process for the children and the families. We're very, very happy with the system, with the result, with the help that's available, the IT that's available, and it's been a wonderful experience for us.
Thank you, Sharon, Jocelyn, and Carol. And now, Ohio, would you care to share your lessons learned?
This is Michelle again. I think I touched on most of the things as far as lessons learned. Again, just, remembering to be flexible and allow plenty of time and testing and support for users. But overall, we would agree that it's been a valuable functionality for us. It's really, most of the time it works quite well, and it's helping our users do what they need to do more efficiently. And it's actually improving our data collection for ICPC, because previously, there may not have been consistent data entry across all of our counties, but now, because they are going to be sending that information through NEICE, there's a greater incentive and requirement, really, for the users to make sure that all of the information is getting documented. So it's going to improve our ability to report out for ICPC as well, and just making sure that all of those records are in one place for the case record down the line. So as more states come on, and once everybody is live in NEICE, it's going to be great, because in the meantime, we do, of course, have to support more than one process. So, our system, when a worker wants to send something out of state, they select the state, and then SACWIS goes and asks NEICE whether or not that's a state that we can use the interface. And so in real time, it gives the worker a message to say, hey, this is a NEICE state. And if not, then they're doing the previous process of printing things out and putting them in the mail or sending via email and so forth. So, again, once more states join and it just becomes the norm, I think that's going to really help a lot.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you all. This has been very informative. Next slide, please. Now, that concludes our discussion for the roundtable, and we hope this was informative and helpful to you. So now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Nick, to run the Q&A session.
Thank you, Terry. Hello, everybody. So we have a few questions in the chat box. But before we dive into those, operator, would you please remind our attendees how they can ask questions over the phone?
Sure. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1. You will be prompted to record your name. To withdraw your question, you may press *2. Again, press *1 to ask a question. And one moment for our first question.
Thank you, operator. I'm going to ask one of the questions that have been submitted. First, there was a question regarding the URL for the YouTube training video that I believe our panelists from Ohio referenced. I will send out a follow-up message to all the attendees with that URL so that you can take a look at it. Next, a question for both states. Can you describe the specifics of the training you provided your users?
This is Michelle in Ohio. Specifically, we set up test cases in our UAT test environment in SACWIS, and on the other side in the NEICE test environment, we actually made up 50 fake cases and sent them to various Ohio counties so that, and then we invited those counties to come in person, and we gave them a walkthrough of the functionality step by step. They were provided with what we call knowledge base articles. So we basically have step-by-step instructions that are also posted to our knowledge base website that Kevin referenced earlier, so users can access that information at any time. And so we gave everybody a walkthrough, and then they were able to log into SACWIS, as they normally do, and find a placement request that they could then process through in the system. In addition to that, as Kevin mentioned, we did host a webinar for the counties as well, where, again, we just walked through all of the functionality, including the, enhancements that we made to our ICPC modules in the SACWIS system and the NEICE aspect of that. So we tried to make sure that we gave people a few different opportunities to learn about it and also to have practice with it. And our counties can access our test environment from their home base usually as well. So once they knew that it was in our test environment, counties were able to come to our walkthrough and then go back and share the information with others and kind of play around in the system a bit. But for the most part, they didn't really have to learn a whole new system. It was just a little bit different way of entering the data and then how to actually create what we call communications in our SACWIS system that we then can transmit to the other state. So it's more about just kind of showing them the changes that we made to the screen and explaining about how this NEICE interface was going to work and what it was going to do so that they could be successful.
Thank you very much. I have another question in the chat box. Are states required to use NEICE now? And Terry Watt from the Division of State Systems is here to answer that question for us. Terry?
Hi, everyone. Glad you all are able to participate in this webinar. NEICE is strongly encouraged by the Children's Bureau, and we understand that maybe some of our regional partners are telling states that it's required to be done now, and that is not correct. I've confirmed it with leadership here in the Children's Bureau. It is not required until 2027. We'll be sending out an email again to confirm that. Again, we strongly encourage you to consider NEICE and bring it in when you're able, but it is not required now. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Now, are there any questions over the phone before I continue with questions in the chat box?
Yes, we do have one question from Angie Lindemann. Angie, your line is open. You may ask your question.
Hello. I was wondering, for the state of New York, were there any other security-related concerns that needed to be addressed?
No, there wasn't. We had the opportunity to have Tetris on site for quite a considerable period of time prior to going live. We did a lot of hands-on training in UAT, and that was when the Social Security number being revealed to anyone who searched a resource or a child was revealed to us, and it was immediately addressed, and it was, diligently worked on by APHSA and Tetris, and it was fixed, and that was the only issue that we had with any confidentiality or information that was viewable or what have you.
And just a quick follow-up question, and how long did it take them to reconcile the issue with the Social Security number?
Yeah, I feel like, this is Carol, I don't recall exactly, but I feel like it took at least around 2 months maybe, at least to the satisfaction and approval of our legal counsel's office. So, they had to review it, and it took them a while to come back with their final approval, too. So that was all part of that process.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And operator, would you please remind our attendees how additional folks may ask a question over the phone?
Sure. At this time, you may ask your question by pressing *1. Again, *1 to ask a question.
Thank you. And I'm going to continue along with questions in the chat box now. We've had a couple questions for the state of Ohio regarding a desire to provide an example of a variable or value that came across the clearinghouse that was different than what you expected. I believe you referenced there were some differences when other states came on board. So if you could please clarify, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure, this is Michelle. There were a couple things. It was really more about how the behind-the-scenes code expected to receive the data. So, for example, I think there was very recently, the issue that we've been working around is Indiana and Kentucky have recently come on, and the way that the middle name, the child's middle name, it's not even so much how they're sending it, I guess, but just something about the way our code is reading it. If the child has no middle name, then we're not able to retrieve the transmittal from the clearinghouse. It's kind of stuck there. So it turns out Indiana actually isn't capturing the middle name. So it's something that we're able to fix, and so in a couple weeks we'll have a SACWIS build that will take care of that going forward. And in the meantime, we just enlisted help from Tetris to kind of nudge those transmittals through so that we're able to receive them. So they're basically going in and having to fix that one element so that we're able to pick it up. And so it's just that kind of detail. And again, we went first, and so our only experience when this was being coded was based on how transmittals looked coming out of the case management system. So, you know, somewhere along the way, things maybe looked a little differently, and so that was the thing. Another issue that has recently come about is that for decentralized states like Ohio, NEICE implemented a validation more recently to require the sending state to pick the receiving county. So, you know, if you wanted to send to Ohio, you'd say you were going to send to Ohio, but then you'd specify the county that you wanted to go to, as well as the specific agency here in Ohio. So that became a challenge for some states that were not capturing the county. And then, so that's kind of been an issue that I guess some other states have had to work around as well to be able to send requests to us. And so, again, it's just about the ongoing communication and collaborating with the states and with the NEICE vendor to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page, and so that we know, you know, what to expect. But they've been great. You know, we've made contacts at the other states to test together and also to kind of troubleshoot when something isn't coming across the way we expect. We're, you know, able to talk about it back and forth and enlist help from Tetris as well to troubleshoot those issues and figure out what we need to do to move forward. So, like I said, as more states come on, you know, we'll have worked some of these kinks out, and it should make it a smoother transition for new states.
Thank you very much. Operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
There are no questions at this time.
Great, thank you. I will continue with questions that we have in the chat box. So the next question that I have is for both states. Can New York and Ohio talk about any reports they have and or need to manage the interstate workload? And we'll start with New York, please.
We're honestly still playing with the report functionality here in New York. What we have found so far is that we are pretty much able to pull up any data that we're really looking for in one or more of the reports that are available. We find that the numbers provided in the reports are very enlightening. We really had no idea prior to going into NEICE what the real numbers were. Excuse me. And in being able to pull these numbers up in NEICE, you get a real idea and real concept of how many children's lives, you know, you're touching through processing these cases in NEICE. It's unbelievable. It allows you to look demographically at where most of the requests are going. It allows you to look at how many cases you've sent to which county, how many home studies are pending, how many home studies have been completed. There's also a tickler in NEICE that tells you when a home study, a safe and timely home study is coming due, which is very useful. The report functionality, we have asked for, I think, maybe just one or two slight enhancements to one of the reports. But otherwise, we've been very pleased with the information available and provided through the report functionality.
This is Carol. I just want to add one thing. One important piece about the reports is understanding where the report draws its data. We did have a concern about an ICWA report we ran.
Oh, right.
And this is just an example. As it turned out, we probably were not properly identifying certain pieces within a data screen. We thought we had it all covered, and it wasn't until we ran the report that we realized the report is looking at not just the ICWA checkbox, but is additionally looking at other selections on the screen. So it was something, understanding where the report is getting their data from is very important as well. Thank you.
This is Michelle. We do have an administrative report that's available to just track basic statistics for incoming and outgoing ICPC records. And we do have some enhancements planned for that report, especially now that I think our data collection is more consistent as a result of this project.
And you mentioned workload management. That is also incorporated into Ohio SACWA. So caseworkers will see these ICPC cases and their case workload, and that would help with that aspect.
Thank you very much. So the next question that I have is for our APHSA and Tetris participants on this panel. How are changes made to the application prioritized and coordinated? What are the frequency of the changes?
Great, thanks for that question. This is Marcie, and I also have Marcie from APHSA. I also have Susmita Linga from Tetris Corporation, but I think I can take this one, Susmita. So we have a help desk or support portal where users of the CMS can submit requests for changes that need to be made to the functionality of the case management system. The clearinghouse users can also submit changes or requests if there's something about a field that needs to have more definition or those kinds of things. So people can submit requests that way. For the CMS changes, we have a user group which meets we pull it as needed. Our plan is as we're moving more into a maintenance and a steady state for NEICE, we plan to meet quarterly with the users to discuss the changes that have been requested. And we have a limited budget for making some changes to the CMS to date. And so as we've had funding available, we've pulled together the users. We've reviewed the list of the product improvements that have been requested. We've set up criteria to determine, okay, does this affect all states? Is this something that just affects one state? Is this something that's critical for the function of completing an ICPC case, or is this kind of a nice-to-have feature? And then the users help us assess and prioritize those requests, and then to the extent that we have funding available to complete them, we try to work through them. In addition, there are changes that are kind of folded in as we can. So if there's a bug that pops up in one screen and Tetris knows that they've received a request for like a more information or a language change, sometimes they're able to incorporate those in. We're working on our process for how product improvements are rolled out, trying to give maximum notice to all of our states when a change is coming, to allow them to review it before it's implemented, and then to make sure that the technical teams can update whatever they need to do on their end. So especially now that we have states that are using a clearinghouse, if there's anything that would change the code, that would need to change their code so that they have ample time. That's what we're working toward. And we're not, I would say we're not probably always there yet, but that's what we are endeavoring to do, and that's our process.
Thank you very much. And I have a follow-up question for you, Marcie. Is there a central governing body for you?
Yes, the AAICPC, the administrators of the ICPC, there's one from each state, is the governing body for the policy of the NEICE project. And we at APHSA, as they're kind of operating the NEICE for them, and we work with that AAICPC body to make decisions concerning the NEICE direction and structure as we need to. The AAICPC has an executive committee, and within that executive committee, they've established a governance committee. And so that's the committee that we work with most closely. And we exchange emails and information with them pretty, like I would say, at least weekly.
Thank you very much. Operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
We do. We have a question from Timmy Hockman. Timmy, your line is open. You may ask your question.
Hi there. I just had a quick question. I had more of a clarification regarding the reports that New York was discussing, and that the reports were meeting their needs. And I was curious if those reports are pulled from their SACWIS system, and that's how they're getting the exact information they need, or if they are pulling those reports directly from the NEICE database.
We're pulling them directly from the NEICE database. Our NEICE database does not communicate with our SACWIS or Connections or CWIS. It's a standalone database, and so all data collected is strictly data on ICPC cases and incoming and outgoing, and there's no information that's shared by NEICE with another system or from another system to NEICE at this point.
Ohio, what was your report gathering the same?
All of our reports are pulling data directly from our SACWIS system, and our users don't interact with the NEICE system at all. So all the data is housed within SACWIS.
Have you pulled reports from NEICE also and compared the two?
No, we actually don't have direct access to the NEICE Case Management System or the MCMS, so we aren't utilizing any of those reports, only reports that we've developed within our system.
Thank you very much. Operator, do we have any additional questions over the phone?
We do. We have a question from Sarah Laverne. Sarah, your line is open. You may ask your question.
Hey, Ohio. How are you all handling when a new agency is added to the ICPC agency list?
So our SACWIS, when you say a new agency, do you mean a new state coming on NEICE or just a new agency within the state?
So kind of both. Like Kentucky, we came on board and we added Kentucky adoptions.
Yes. So within our SACWIS functionality, when the user is creating an ICPC record, they select the state, and then, like I said, our SACWIS system actually checks with NEICE, basically. It runs a call and says, hey, is this a NEICE state? And if so, then we get those agency names from NEICE, and they're in the drop-down. So if the user picks Kentucky, then they have a drop-down for selecting the agency to receive the request, and they can choose between your regular central office or your adoptions office. So we try to take the guesswork out of it for the users, and those agency names are for our agencies, our Ohio agencies, we do have that coded on our side, but in general, those are I'm trying to say this the better way, but the agencies are known to the NEICE system, so we call the NEICE system to get that information so that it is consistent. And as soon as somebody new comes on or a new agency is added to NEICE, we'll have it available in real time, basically, because we're checking at that moment that we're setting up that case.
Was that Michelle? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Operator, are there any additional questions over the phone?
At this time, I do not see any additional questions.
Thank you. For our attendees, as a reminder, you may enter questions via the chat box, or you may submit questions over the phone by pressing *1, I believe. It looks like we have one final question in the chat box. Do Ohio or New York have suggestions or other lessons learned for working with the NEICE contractor? We'll start with Ohio.
This is Michelle again. So we have pretty frequent communication with the folks at Tetris, and during the course of the development, as we said, we use vendor staff to actually do the design and development work with us. And so I believe they had ongoing regular communications, ongoing conference calls with the Tetris team throughout that process. And then since we've gone live, just any time that there's any issues that arise on either side, we're just directly emailing and sorting it out or having a phone call as needed. So that's been really positive experience as far as being able to kind of work together and collaborate to get things working.
Hi, and this is New York. Our experience has been very positive. Sharon could probably speak better than I, but even our staff here mentioned that, when they need help and they use the help support available in NEICE, right, the direct help, the responsiveness is remarkable. So we really have had no issues in that area. In fact, we are thankful to Tetris for all of their help getting us up and running. Anything, Sharon, that you want to add to that?
No, it's just they really are incredibly responsive. We have I don't think we've ever waited more than one business day for them to respond to our requests for help or requests for clarification. They check in on us to make sure that it's functioning properly after the ticket has been closed. I just randomly check in on us and ask, is there anything that you're finding that you might need from us, or that, something needs to work better, or something that's working well for you. The communication is wonderful. It's just been a really pleasant experience. They're available what feels like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and their responsiveness is very, very quick.
Thank you very much. Operator, are there any additional questions over the phone?
At this time, I do not see any questions.
I'm going to transition to another question that we have in the chat box. Do users of the clearinghouse have the ability to see its data in the clearinghouse?
This is Michelle. We do not, because the clearinghouse, my understanding is that the clearinghouse is basically just a secure pass-through. So we maintain our data in our SACWA system, and that sending state maintains their data. So we don't have, basically our system goes out to the clearinghouse and grabs the transmittals and brings the data into our system. So we don't have any direct access to NEICE or the clearinghouse, like me as a user, to go in and look at any of that.
Thank you, Michelle. Marcie, would you care to confirm or add any additional information?
Yes, that's correct. By design, the clearinghouse itself, there's no information that's held there. It's really just passed through to other states. So if your state comes on as a clearinghouse, then you retain all your data and all your interactions with all the other states that you're working with. So you really are the keeper of your data and can design and implement your reports as you want to. But you wouldn't be able to log into the clearinghouse and have access to your cases.
Thank you very much. Operator, are there any additional questions over the phone?
There are no additional questions over the phone at this time.
Great. Well, with that, I think what we will do is we will transition to the next slide. This will conclude the question and answer session. Okay, so the Children's Bureau has, we created a federal repository to facilitate sharing of software between states, and it is called the Child Welfare Information System Project Software and Artifact Pool, or CSWAP for short, because it's quite a long name. Now, we wanted to remind folks, if you are interested, Ohio's NEICE code is available for download from CSWAP, and you may click the link that is on that screen in order to learn about access and use. And just as a general reminder, in the handout section of your GoToWebinar software, so if you don't see a handouts option, there's an orange arrow towards the top of your screen on the right side. If you click on it, you'll be able to see handouts, and from there you can download this PowerPoint. We will provide an additional follow-up email with a link to, I believe it was Ohio's training video. And with that, I'm going to pass this along to Terry. Oh, it looks like we have another question. Forgive me. Give me one moment. It looks like the link within the slide does not work for an individual using Chrome. I will send the link in that same follow-up email in case anybody has an issue with it, and I can also send this PowerPoint as well. Let's transition now to the next slide, and Terry, can you please close us out?
Yes, thank you, Nick. Once again, thank you to our panelists from New York and Ohio, and if you would like to contact them directly, their contact information is listed. This webinar has been recorded and will be made available online. When it is complete and posted, a message will be sent announcing availability on the Children's Bureau website. As we move forward, thank you for attending, and that ends the roundtable discussion.